To Sammy Hage and Payola, thanks so much for subscribing to my channel. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for regular uploads and your chance to be included shoutouts for future videos. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we'll be discussing just a topic that I thought would be important to cover, because I seem to always get questions regarding superfatting and when to increase or decrease superfat depending on what sort of soap, cold process soap you're making, whether it's for the hair, the face, the body, or for cleaning. And obviously, well, I'm going to cover another important topic because I don't know why, but the last couple of months I seem to be getting a lot of questions from new people that are making soap, or people that have never tried handmade soap and they want to know the key differences between commercial soap and handmade soap. So I'll be covering these two topics today: superfat and why it's beneficial in handmade soap, and why, of course, overall handmade soap is better than commercial soap. So the first big difference between handmade soap and commercial soap is that real handmade soap is made with skin-loving oils such as olive, coconut, shea butters, and obviously amazing additives that lots of soapers use to put in their bars, like almond milk, oat milk, and coconut milk. And of course, decorations on top, like with rose petals and just skin-loving ingredients that we put in handmade soap. And we convert, it's called saponification. We convert the whole oil in the soap recipe into actual soap. So just to give a visual representation of the reaction that happens, I'll just provide just some slideshows after this, some images, just to give a visual representation of what happens and what is superfat and the reaction in soap. So let's go ahead, and I just find it easier to visually see, something in front of you, and so then you can understand what superfat is and what just soap is in general. Alright, so what do we have here? I'm sure everyone that knows how to make soap knows exactly what's in front of us here. So we have in the big pot, obviously oil, and in the silver milk jug that I like to use for my lye water, we have 2 ingredients in there. We have more than 2 ingredients in there, of course. We've got other additives, but we're just going to keep it as simple as possible just for visual representation. We combine, sodium hydroxide with water. We dissolve it in the water, and then we add the lye solution, as we like to call it, to the actual oils, and we blend it together, and that creates soap. So this is known as saponification. So this is one of the big differences between handmade soap and commercial soap. Commercial soaps don't have oils like this, and if they do have oils, it'll be a very, very small amount of oil with other hardeners and other waxes to actually make it hard, like a bar of soap, and they actually have added surfactants in it. So you only need 3 ingredients to make soap at home: oil, water, and lye, and that's all you need, those 3 basic ingredients. When you combine them together to create a chemical reaction known as saponification to create soap. So this is the end result. Actually, the picture you've seen before, those were the oils actually used to make this soap. This particular soap I made with mostly olive oil, a little bit of coconut oil, and a little bit of castor oil, just to help with lather. So this creates beautiful bars of soap, and that's before and after, I guess, just to have a visual representation of you can convert something into liquid, and that's the whole point of the saponification reaction. It converts a liquid into a bar of soap, such as this. So the biggest question and the most common question I get, and I've seen people ask, is what is a superfat in soap? So essentially, just to keep it as simple as possible, a superfat is a percentage of weight of your total recipe that isn't converted to soap. So let's just say, for example, we have 1,000 grams or 1 kilo of oil we are working with in our soap recipe, and we want to do a 5% superfat, which is usually the standard we stick with for the body. So that's 50 grams, because literally a percentage. So 50 grams of the 1000 grams, which is 5%, will be actual oil and not converted into soap. And let's say 10%, for example. So we want a 10% superfat, so then 100 grams of the 1000 grams will not be converted to soap, and it'll just be free floating oils in our bars and in our recipe. And the benefits of a superfat is to make the soap more conditioning and more mild on the skin, because if we have a 0% superfat, so let's just say, you know, the full 1000 grams is soap, then there won't be any oils left over, or at least a very, very minimal amount of oil left over in the soap. And it can actually over clean and over strip your skin. So that's why we stick with a 5%, or, you know, we stick with a percentage of superfat in our soap recipes, particularly for the body and face and the hair as well. We need excess oils in the bar, so the actual bar itself is very conditioning on the skin. So how is the superfat actually calculated in our recipe? So we use a lye calculator to calculate how much lye we need in our recipe, and it will change depending on the percentage of oils and the ratio of oils you use in your recipe. So not one, you know, all different oils, not one oil will have the same sap value, also known as a saponification value. So basically each gram of oil needs a particular amount of grams of sodium hydroxide to convert the actual oil into soap, and every oil and every butter will have different sap values. So it's really important to use a lye calculator. And the way we adjust the superfat is there is a little field in the lye calculator asking the percentage of superfat, and that's always going to be the same, the way it calculates the superfat, because it will just deduct 5% of the whole lye requirement, and it will, as a percentage, so 5%, so it'll take 5% off. So let's just, for simplicity's sake, say that, you know, we've got 1000 grams of oil, and then we've got 100 grams of lye to convert that 1000 grams of oil, and we want a 5% superfat. It will literally take 5% off that 100 grams of lye requirement and bring it down to 95 grams. And that's where the superfat actually comes from and how it's actually calculated, and the lye calculator does that for you. Right, so the next big thing is, regarding to superfat, is how much superfat do we need depending on the purpose of our cold process soap. So generally, and this is just from my experience, you know, of, you know, making soap over the last 5 years almost now, and I found that for the body, a really good range to stick within is 5 to 8%, because you actually want to come out of the shower after you wash yourself with your soap, and you don't want your skin to feel tight and dry afterwards. And the last thing you want to do is, you know, feel like you have to moisturize your skin and put some sort of body lotion on afterwards, because if it's drying out your skin, it's, you know, not pleasant, it's unpleasant, and you want to actually come out of the shower feeling like your skin is nourished. And that's just one of the big things that I've heard from customers, is because they're so used to commercial soap, so when they come out of the shower and they realize, oh wow, my skin actually feels so hydrated, I've never knew soap can make your skin feel that way. And all other, you know, soap makers that I know, the same thing with them as well. They've had their customers say, I've never known soap to be so beautiful to use. And that's exactly what you want. You want your customers, or even if you're just making it for yourself and your family and friends, you want people that are actually using your soaps to have a high opinion of it, and you don't want it to dry their skin out. You want it to be as conditioning and as nourishing as possible. And that also highly depends on the quality of oils you actually put into your soaps as well. So I always recommend going the unrefined route as much as possible. So like unrefined shea butter, unrefined cocoa butter, you know, virgin cold pressed, extra virgin cold pressed olive oil, virgin coconut oil. All these unrefined additives really make a big difference in the way your soaps actually feel. And with the superfat, with those two, you have those beautiful, high quality oils you're putting in, and they are super fatted. So there's a percentage of your bar that has shea butter in it, and has, coconut oil in it, and, high quality unrefined stuff, and your skin just absorbs it and it just loves it. It's like you feed your skin. It's amazing. And it's the same can be said for face as well. The face is really sensitive, and I find between 8 and 12% for the face. You can wash your face with the facial bars, facial soap, and your face doesn't feel like it needs to be moisturized. It doesn't feel dry or tight. It feels really nourished. I have heaps of videos on making facial bars as well. I have quite a few of those, and quite a few videos on shampoo bars, and of course body bars as well, and cleaning bars like dish and laundry. And this is from many years of experimenting and finding what works best. And I find for facial, between 8 and 12% is just the sweet spot. Usually I stick with 10% for facial bars. I find that's really the sweet spot. And 8% usually I use for oily skin, because you don't want it too super fatted, because then it'll make oily skin even more oily. So it's really important to really test your recipes and find which super fat works with the types of oils you're using, because of course, as we know, each oil has its own properties. Some oils are more conditioning, some are less conditioning, some are cleansing, and that's a whole other topic which we won't be covering in this video, because then this video will be over an hour long, and I want to keep it as simple and as short as possible. So for shampoo bars, I found I could only really formulate shampoo bars for normal to dry hair. I haven't had any luck with combo hair, combination, or oily hair. But sticking just with normal to dry, I found 5% seemed to be the sweet spot for normal to dry hair, and I have a lot of positive feedback from customers regarding that as well. And for cleaning, people always ask, can I put a super fat on my cleaning and my dish bars as well? And yes, you can. I wouldn't recommend going above 2% super fat, but me personally, I recommend 0% super fat, because any excess oils can stain your clothes and can leave a little bit of a oily residue on your dishes. It can, leave that behind, and we kind of want to avoid that when we're cleaning. So these are just general recommendations. For body, there is one exception where you can go up to actually 30% or even 35% super fat, is when you make 100% coconut oil soaps, because it is a very, very cleansing oil, and if you leave it at 5% or even 8%, it'll dry your skin. So that's the only exception where I would say 20% is acceptable and will actually function as intended in terms of leaving your skin feeling nourished and moisturized. So minimum 20%. I personally like to stick it at 20%, especially in summer. I find, because we have really humid days here in New South Wales, and I find 20% super fat for pure coconut oil soaps really combats oily skin, but without leaving your skin dry. So it's just a fantastic soap to use in the hotter months. And definitely, if you've never tried pure coconut oil soap 20%, it's something you really, really have to try. But people in Malaysia and some, South Asian regions, they actually use 35% super fat coconut oil, and they, from what I've read, and even some other soaping people I know have tried it, and it's absolutely beautiful. So pure coconut oil soap is the only exception where you can actually do that. So what other factors can increase super fat without otherwise knowing that you're intentionally doing it is actually some oils and butters have unsaponifiables in them, such as avocado, shea butter is probably the biggest one, cocoa butter, and mango butter. I'm sure there are a couple of others, but this is just ones that I'm well versed in and that I actually use in my range. And what unsaponifiables are is there are, this percentage of the oil or butter you're working with will never be converted into soap. That's why they're called unsaponifiables. And no matter how much lye you introduce to them, it will not convert those unsupplinifiables into soap, you'll just end up with a lye excess. So the lye calculator does a calculation for you. It just gives you, based on the percentage of superfat you put in, it already adjusts. It knows how much fatty acids are in the butter or the oil to convert into soap. So you don't have to do any calculations with that. But just bear in mind that having, say, 30% or 20% shea butter in your recipe will actually increase your superfat. So if we have, 1,000 grams of oil and 200 grams of that oil or fat requirement in the recipe is shea butter, between 7 and 15% of shea butter by weight is unsupplinifiable. So you could end up with, calculating at 5%, you can end up with a 6 to 7% or even 8% superfat, which is beautiful, which is great because it's great for the skin. But if you're making, for example, I used to make a cocoa shea recipe, which is actually 70% shea butter and 30% coconut oil. Amazing bar to use, but I would leave the superfat at 3% because I was essentially getting a 9 or a 10% superfat on average. So it's really important to know that what oils and butters you're using, they will also just natively increase the superfat in your recipe. And the biggest one is shea butter. That's got the most unsupplinifiables, I believe, out of any oil and butter you can actually use in soap. But that's why it's beautiful to use, because it's just amazing for the skin. And another thing too also that people generally don't think of, or I haven't seen many topics covering this, is actually fragrance oils can increase superfat. And fragrance oils are dispersed in a carrier oil, whether it's sunflower oil, which is usually what they use, but a lot of synthetic fragrance oils can be actually mineral oil, which is derived from crude oil, and that's still an oil. It's still got a sap value. It's somewhat conditioning to the skin. It's not as conditioning, so that will increase your superfat, but it might not necessarily add to any benefit by doing so. It can actually decrease the hardness of your bar as well. And one thing I have gotten people actually saying, what they've noticed, especially when using essential oils versus fragrance oils, they say that when they actually use fragrance oils, their bars seem to be a little more softer and doesn't last as long. And of course, because let's say we've got a 5% superfat, and usually we do max 5% fragrance, so that's 50 grams per 1,000 grams of oil. So we're adding an additional 50 grams of fragrance oil on top of the 50 grams 5% superfat that we have in our recipe. So we have 100 grams now free floating oils in our soap bar. So yes, that can absolutely affect the overall longevity of your soap bars. So that's something to actually keep in mind as well. So sometimes adding, if you don't need to add 5%, like if your fragrance oil that you're using still smells beautiful at 3 or 4%, I will always recommend using less, because you will actually end up with a harder bar and a longer lasting bar as well. And one thing I've actually been considering on doing is I was actually talking to a soaping friend of mine, Cassandra. I'm sure you've heard me mention her in a few videos. Cassandra Hill Soaps as well. I did a post on social media. She sent me some beautiful soaps to use. And she was actually one person that also said that she noticed when using fragrance oils that her bars are softer. And we actually got into a conversation, and you've seen me make my double oat soap bars. I have actually quite a few videos on those. That's my favorite, most top selling soap recipe in my range. And it's absolutely beautiful, but it doesn't last as long as essential oil soaps. And I have noticed that. And I use an actual organic fragrance oils in an organic sunflower base. And you've seen me talk about the organic fragrance oils I use from Nature's Flavors. So I have a 5% superfat already in my soaps, and then I'm actually using 5% of the fragrance oils. So essentially I'm superfatting with sunflower oil. because on the back on the ingredients list it says organic sunflower oil, and then it says organic and natural flavor compounds or scent compounds, and so that overall actually contributes to this superfat. So unless you 100% know the base of your oil in your fragrance oil is sunflower oil, if it says it on the ingredients list, you can theoretically actually reduce the superfat of your soap recipe to 0%, because you adding the 5%, well, you are actually adding 50 grams of free-floating oils in your recipe. So you're essentially adding by 5% fragrance oils, you're actually a 5% superfat, essentially. So I was actually discussing this with Cassandra, saying that I could theoretically put it down to 2 or 3%, because I wouldn't go all the way to 0, but you can theoretically go to 0, but I might reduce it to maybe 2 or 3% with the organic fragrance oils, because I know it's sunflower oil, and I know it's a very good quality sunflower oil, and sunflower oil is beautiful on the skin as well, and it actually creates a nice lather as well, a stable lather, and it's actually readily absorbed by the skin, so it's not going to create a yucky, gooey feeling. It's actually going to be beautiful to use. So that's why you see a lot of aromatherapy roll-ons, they use sunflower oil as the base, because it's readily absorbed by the skin and doesn't leave any residues on. So yeah, I thought I'll just cover that, because these things, when you think about it, it's not something we really kind of think about, is that we just think, okay, 5% superfat, 5% fragrance, but essentially it is really a 10% superfat when we think about it, especially if you know your base is sunflower oil. So in terms of mineral oil, that's a bit different. I wouldn't probably reduce the superfat of your recipe, because it really does very little to condition your skin, and it will actually dry your skin out. Your skin will become very dry if you do a 0 or 2% superfat, and then you account for the mineral oil part, the fragrance oil part, and you think like, oh yeah, that should condition the skin. It actually won't. It's actually, your skin will become dry. So I still recommend 5% even when using a fragrance oil, a synthetic one, when they use mineral oil as the base, the carrier oil base. But just be wary, like if you can use say 4% of the fragrance and still get a really nice smelling soap, I would recommend using the 4%. Even some fragrance oils, you can use 3% and the smell can still really come through. I would recommend using the 3% over the 4-5%, because it will actually create a longer lasting bar as well. So I thought I'll cover that, because I haven't really seen or read much about how fragrance oils can affect the longevity and the superfat of your bars. So just to cover quickly, additives that actually boost conditioning in your soap recipe. And a lot of people don't realize, but adding salt in your soap recipe, whether it's sea salt or pink salt, when you dissolve it in the lye water, actually conditions your skin. Salt is very conditioning, as long as it's not refined and bleached and deodorized, as they do with table salt, and then they add iodine and the anti-caking agents to it. That won't condition your skin. But unrefined, unprocessed sea salt or pink salt or Dead Sea salt, they are full of minerals and they will actually condition your skin. And they actually, it's kind of like skin food, kind of. Like I've noticed, like when I make ocean water bars, and of course ocean water has got salt in it. Actually, I think it's about actually I don't remember the percentage of salt in seawater. I can't remember the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it's 30%, between 25 and 30%. Yeah, I think so, by weight. So that's of salt that's actually in salt water. Well, lucky I just looked, and yeah, it's between 30 and 35% by weight. And yeah, it's just absolutely beautiful when you use soaps made with ocean water. It just conditions your skin. Your skin feels absolutely beautiful. And other additives like sugar obviously boosts lather. Sugar boosts lather in soap, and of course the salt creates a nice hard bar, and sugar is really conditioning, as well as sodium lactate. Sodium lactate is still a salt, it's just a different type of salt, and it's usually made from fermenting vegetable materials like beetroot and some other vegetable matter. Don't remember on the top of my head, but that also is conditioning, boosts lather, and just it's really good for the skin. It's a humectant as well, so it draws moisture from the air to the skin, much like glycerin. Clays are another good one. They really add to conditioning benefits in your bars. They are full of antioxidants and minerals and just essential stuff that our skin absolutely loves and absorbs. And of course, milks, whether vegan or cow's milks or goat's milk, or even oat milk and coconut milk, any type of milks that we add, of course, add to conditioning benefits in our recipe. And aloe vera is absolutely gorgeous in soap. Once you use soap with aloe vera, you'll just feel it, you'll just know. So, I mean, you can actually create soap with every single one of these additives, which I recommend if you are going to make soap beautiful and you want it to be as conditioning as possible. I recommend all of these. Maybe not aloe vera and everything, but the other ones, from salt all the way down to milks, I highly recommend you put those in your recipes, because they'll just make an absolutely beautiful bar of soap, and a conditioning one at that. Right, so the biggest difference in handmade soaps. Well, as you know, real soap uses oils and butters and converts them into the soap molecule. Does not contain added surfactants and preservatives. So those commercial soaps you see like in the supermarket and pharmacies, that's actually that's not real soap. They might call it soap because it behaves in the way to actually clean your skin, and they're actually detergents. So surfactants are detergents. Surfactants aren't always synthetic. They can be naturally, they can be sourced naturally, or they could be synthetic. It doesn't really matter. They're still a detergent, and they used to strip matter from surface tension. And they used to actually remove dirt and grime from surfaces in your skin. So that's basically what a detergent does. And even though soap behaves like a detergent, soap is not a detergent. So the soap molecule, when introduced with water, friction and surface tension, creates lather, and then gently removes dirt and grime and excess oils from the skin or from surfaces. And that's where you actually have great control. So as we discussed before, when we're designing a cleaning bar just for cleaning, not for body use, you'll do 0% superfat and maybe 100% coconut oil. So it's a super cleansing bar, and it's exceptionally well at removing dirt and grime from surfaces. But you don't need it to add surfactants, detergents to it, because it does it naturally. The coconut soap molecule does it naturally. So that's one of the biggest difference between actual soaps and commercial soaps. And the detergents often used in commercial soaps, like sodium lauryl sulfate, is extremely irritating to the skin. It's not very skin friendly, and it can cause rash and irritations. And with prolonged use, I mean, you can research this yourself, it actually creates sensitivity issues. So over many months and years of using it, your skin becomes less friendly with it, I guess, so to speak, just to break it down. And over long use, you can actually develop some sort of, I wouldn't say allergy, but sensitivity to it. And whereas the soap molecule, it doesn't behave that way. You can formulate the most gentle soaps, high in olive oil and, soft oils, conditioning oils like castor and sweet almond and jojoba, and just, beautiful nourishing oils, and, really super conditioning butters like shea butter, and, formulating, super, gentle soaps can actually be used on eczema prone skin, baby skin, just any problematic skin you're trying to use soap on. You can create the most gentle recipes, and this is where handmade soap is far superior than commercial soap. And the word soap, that's why it has a bad name, because of the commercial soaps. People just equate, handmade soaps to commercial soaps, but they are not the same at all. And as you've seen, like, it's detergent based in commercial soaps. You can read the ingredients. It's full of nasty additives, hardeners, detergents, preservatives, and they're really just not something you'd really want to use. I cannot believe I used to use commercial soaps. Like, once you start using Handmade, you will never go back. Like, you'll be just silly like if you go back to commercial soaps. And one of the biggest differences, and this is what makes Handmade soap far superior, is glycerin. Between 5 and 10% of soap by weight contains naturally occurring glycerin. During the saponification process, between 5 and 10% of the actual soap is actual glycerin by weight. And glycerin is a humectant. It draws moisture from the air to your skin when you're washing, and it's exceptionally conditioning and moisturizing for your skin. So you can actually find a lot of, I guess, real soaps, but still considered commercial soaps on the market. So that still, convert oils and butters, with the saponification process, by adding lye to the oils, and lye solution to the oils and converting it to soap. But what they actually do is, with high heat, they separate the glycerin out and they sell it as a separate product on the market, and that's the second income stream for them. So a lot of the times, actual, I guess soap, like real soap, real commercial soap, as I'll call it, would still be saponified soap, but without the glycerin, and it's still drying, even with the superfat, still exceptionally drying to the skin. And you'll see that they try to add, other humectants and moisturizing additives to it to combat the lack of glycerin in the actual product, but it really does not compare to Handmade soap, because that 5 to 10% taken out just breaks soap. It's not, you're not getting the benefits from it. You just, it's just, when you use it, when there are heaps of soap out there, like triple milled soap, as they call it, that don't actually have the glycerin in there. And you absolutely notice the difference. It's still a lot better than commercial soap, detergent-based bars, as I like to call them as well. They are still better. I mean, they are better for the skin, but nothing compared to Handmade. So if in your area, a Handmade soap maker, by all means, definitely try buying from them as well, because you'll be getting a far superior product. And of course, you'll be supporting a local business as well at the same time. Right, so I tried my best to visually represent. I'm laughing at myself because I'm sure I could have done a better job, but I'm not very creative in some ways, so I thought this would be the best. You're probably all going to laugh with me, or at me, or whatever. I'll take both. But this is just to visually represent what's in real Handmade soap. So obviously the green dots on the bar and the blue dots represent the superfat, the free floating oils that we have in our soap that haven't been converted into the soap molecule. And of course, the glycerin naturally occurring during the saponification process. So a commercial bar, whether a detergent-based bar with hardeners or triple milled, for example, with the glycerin taken out, won't have either of these. Either they might have a superfat, like with the soaps that, triple milled soaps that have the glycerin taken out. They might have a superfat, but they won't have the glycerin. But for sure, commercial soap, the detergent base, don't have either. And even if they add glycerin to it, it's still nothing, the amount compared to Handmade soap. So this is just, you know, when you pick up a bar of real handmade soap, even though obviously we're not going to see the dots like this on the soap, but it's just to visually see that it's full of glycerin and full of excess fat in the bar, which is why our skin loves it, and it's so skin friendly. And it's just, if you've never tried handmade soap, well, you absolutely should try it, because you will notice the difference, especially when they use beautiful unrefined oils in their recipe as well. You will absolutely notice the difference on your skin. So thanks so much everyone for watching. So hopefully I didn't confuse everyone or bore everyone. I thought I'll just cover some areas that I thought are important, and just to give people general idea, especially for new soap makers or for people that don't really know the difference between handmade and commercial. This will give some idea as to the benefits of handmade, and that's why there is also a cost difference, because, you know, triple milled or, you know, detergent based bars with hardeners in them, or commercial soaps, you know, as we call them, that's why they're incredibly cheap, because the ingredients that go in are very cheap. And handmade soap, of course, is going to be a little bit more expensive, because you're paying for a quality product with beautiful superfatted oils in your recipe, in the recipe that the soap maker uses, and of course having glycerin intact in your recipe. And I will actually also add about the glycerin. I've had people ask if they can add extra glycerin to their cold process soap, and the answer to that is absolutely not. And the reason why is because handmade soap has enough glycerin in it naturally. By adding more, it will start to behave like melt and pour soap, in a sense of it will start to sweat and draw excess moisture from the air, and you want to avoid that. If you want to make your soap more moisturizing, do not add glycerin, adjust the superfat, or change some of the oils out in your recipe and add extra conditioning, you know, stuff like shea butter or cocoa butter or something like that. So that's how you control whether your soap bar is extra conditioning. So absolutely do not add glycerin to your cold process soap. Right, so that was the last little thing I wanted to cover. I was actually meant to mention that earlier, but I forgot. So lucky I remembered before we wrapped up. So thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel as well and like the video. And also, if you are wanting to support the channel, you can just you know, hit the join button down below for just a really low fee monthly subscription, just to generally support the channel, or you can send thanks. And I really appreciate all the love and support I've gotten from everyone since starting my YouTube channel, and very, very blessed and humbled by the amazing community we have built together. So thank you very much, and until next time, take care and happy soaping.